So we get the same thread of comments and questions on just about every video that we've done on The Greatest Generation. I'm paraphrasing now, but it goes something like this. Where did these heroes come from? And will we ever see this type of generational greatness again? Or put another way, does our current generation of teens have this type of greatness in them? Okay, so it's actually two questions that we get, but they're related, as you can see. If you don't believe me, just run through the thousands of comments on our shorts and you'll see what I mean. So what I love about that first question, where did these heroes come from, is that it's a genuine question, not a rhetorical one. I think all of us, myself included, we'd really like to know the answer to that. Our viewers ask that question because we all have the same curiosity. Where did they come from? I mean, how could one generation of Americans be so exceptional, so selfless, so heroic, and at such a young age? You know, we've done over 300 videos now, and I'm guessing about half have been on World War II, maybe 2/3. Either the individuals who fought in it or key battles. And that's been deliberate on our part. After all, this is a history channel with a focus on American exceptionalism. When I say American exceptionalism, what I really mean is the men and women throughout our history who have helped make this country what it is today. Irrespective of what you think about current events or the state of our country right now, our focus is on the people and their heroic stories that have helped shape American greatness for 200 years. And by the way, I do think American greatness exists. So it really is about the people. And that's why we tell the stories the way we do. We try to hit you in the feels, as one of the comments rightly put it in our videos, because we want the focus to be on their stories, what they went through, what they sacrificed, what they did unflinchingly and unfailingly so that we could be here today. At heart, my brother and I, we're storytellers, and we love telling their stories. And World War II, more than any event in American history, is rife with those stories of sacrifice and selflessness. Some that are really well known, but most that aren't. They're all poignant, they're all moving. There's a reason why our videos get lots of tear emojis in the comments. We especially love telling stories of ordinary Americans who did extraordinary things under the most trying of circumstances. These heroes did it without question, without fail, without complaint, and without grandstanding. They did it, quite frankly, because it was asked of them. They did it because they felt obligated to. They did it because it was necessary. Was it something intrinsic to this particular generation of Americans? Something in their DNA that previous or future generations didn't or don't necessarily have, that allowed them to rise to the occasion in such a consistent and ubiquitous way? Was it a cultural thing? Was it just a moment in time? Did the event shape the generation or vice versa? I've thrown a lot at you, but the truth is, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. But what's most striking to me is that it wasn't just isolated incidents of heroism or sacrifice among the greatest generation. It was across the board. It was so commonplace that we think of it as an entire generation, hence the name, the greatest generation. When you stop and think about it, that's pretty amazing. And by the way, referring to the World War II heroes as the greatest generation, it doesn't denigrate any other generations at all, as is sometimes suggested in our comments. It's just shorthand, at least in my point of view, for acknowledging that this particular generation of Americans was called upon in a way that none prior or since has been called upon, and they delivered in both a spectacular and understated fashion. Now that is really hard to do. I suppose part of the reason why we love telling these stories is that we simply want to preserve them. 16 million Americans fought in World War II. Over 400,000 didn't survive, and virtually our entire country was involved in some way. We could run this channel for the next 500 years, and we still wouldn't cover all their stories. Every one of those 16 million has a story worth listening to, a story worth appreciating, a story worth sharing. And with each passing day, we're losing more and more of these heroes. A time will come, a time very soon, when there'll be a generation past, and America will be slightly worse for it. And part of the reason we love telling these stories is maybe we'll begin figuring out what actually made this generation so great. Maybe the answer is in their individual stories. Like I said, there's a lot of them. A few that we all know, but most that we don't. Perhaps if we keep sharing enough of them, over time it'll become apparent to all of us as to what made this generation tick, how they were able to rise to the occasion, and is there something that we can learn from them? Which leads to the second question we get. Will we ever see this type of generational greatness again? Or put another way, would high school students today meet the moment like the greatest generation? You know, many of the heroes and heroines of our videos from the greatest generation were teenagers. They were 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds doing extraordinary things. And so, of course, it would beg the comparison. Would teenagers today be up to the challenge of storming the beaches at Iwo Jima or Normandy, parachuting into a torrent of machine gun or mortar fire, flying bomber mission after bomber mission, knowing that you'd be statistically dead after 5? I mean, it's probably an unfair comparison. We've done many videos on recent Medal of Honor recipients, most notably from Iraq and Afghanistan, and their heroism and selflessness matches anything we've seen from the World War II generation. I personally am always so moved by how willingly and readily these heroes will sacrifice their own lives to preserve the life of their brothers and sisters in arms. Go through some of our videos and you see what I mean. It is nearly impossible not to well up in witnessing their sacrifice. We should all be so exceptionally proud of the fine people today that serve in our military, protecting our freedoms. But I suppose that's different than asking if the current generation of teenagers, which essentially the greatest generation was, a generation of teenagers, could leave the cozy confines of home and their safe places en masse and go fight a war and fight it heroically half a world away. Does this current generation of teenagers have what it takes to save the world? I mean, I would hope so, but I'm not sure I'd bank on it. You know, I have a teenage son, and he's an amazing young man, but I'm not sure he and his friends would reproduce the mind-numbing heroics of the World War II generation. Thankfully and hopefully they'll never be asked to, but I wouldn't want to bank our nation's destiny on it. And therein lies the great paradox. The greatest generation made those sacrifices, and in many cases with their lives, so that future generations would never have to. They wanted to leave the world a better place than they found it, and they spectacularly did. All sorts of arguments could be made about what type of custodians subsequent and current generations have been with the America left to us. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, but that's not something I'm going to dive into today. So to return to the first question, where did the greatest generation come from? Were they an anomaly, or do we all have it in us to meet the moment as they did? I don't know, but I do know that we can never tell their stories too often or thank them too much, and so that's what we're going to keep doing. I hope you enjoy this. I'll see you next time.